Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. Thank you all for being here today for this oversight hearing on the challenges and needs of the Department of Veteran Affairs Police Force and how Congress can support them in fulfilling their critical mission. Before we proceed further, I ask unanimous consent for Representative Morgan Luttrell to participate in this hearing. This week we celebrate Police Week, and I am grateful for the opportunity to highlight our brave men and women in uniform. VA police do critical work to ensure our nation's heroes safely receive the care and benefits they have earned. I would like to take a moment to say thank you to the current and former VA police and other first responders who have joined us today. I'm excited to welcome Chief Soto and Chief Chester, along with former VA Police Officer of the Year, Mr. Hunt. The VA police play a vital role in ensuring the safety and security of VA facilities, employees, and the veterans they serve. In fact, many VA police are veterans themselves. The stakes are high, and VA police face unique challenges that make it hard for them to carry out their duties. VA police are often in dangerous and difficult situations. It's essential they receive the training and support necessary to handle these situations safely and effectively. As Senate Veterans Affairs Ranking Member Moran pointed out in a recent letter, Congress must explore ways to enhance training programs for VA police officers and put the pressure on the VA to provide them with tools and resources needed to protect themselves and others. VA police are often the only individuals equipped to help a veteran who enters the facility with the intent of taking their own life. Suicide prevention training is paramount for all police officers and is required by law, but recent data shows it has not so far been a priority of the department. Another issue facing the VA police is the need for improved coordination and communication with other law enforcement agencies. The VA police, often in emergency situations, work alongside other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, and it is crucial that they have effective communication channels in place to coordinate their efforts and respond to emergencies quickly. Today, I hope to learn more about the technologies and best practices that could help reduce these communication challenges. On top of these issues, VA police have constant issues with recruitment. Through the PACT Act, Congress authorized critical skills incentive payments, which can help VA police with staffing shortages due to pay. Congress, however, must continue to work with VA to address staffing shortages and ensure VA police have the resources they need to fulfill their mission. VA police play a vital role in ensuring the safety and security of VA facilities and the veterans they serve. As such, Congress must make sure VA police have the tools they need to carry out their critical mission. Thank you again for being here today. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on how we can best support the VA police force. With that, I now recognize Ranking Member Mervan for his opening comments.
Thank you, Chair Kiggins. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the issues impacting our VA police officers and other essential security staff. This hearing is very timely considering it is National Police Week. I want to start by thanking those first responders, active and retired, that are here today. Thank you for your dedication to keeping our veterans, caregivers, and VA staff safe day in and day out. And the VA police have an important duty and great responsibility in protecting veterans and the VA providers. They also play a key role in ensuring VA facilities are a welcoming community for every veteran. A community many belong to themselves. Nearly 90% of VA police are veterans. This committee has led several hearings and roundtables in recent years to discuss the challenges facing the VA police force. However, it is long overdue that Congress takes the feedback we have received and creates solutions. For example, over half of the medical facilities surveyed in fiscal year 2023 by VA's Office of Inspector General reported a severe police shortage. That's 73 facilities. These significant shortages have persisted since at least fiscal year 2018 and partially driven by disparities in officer pay and benefits. Based on exit survey data from 2021 and 2022, nearly 30% of respondents departed the VA police service due to pay and benefit issues. Today, our VA police force, our police officers, are still not treated equitably with their other federal law enforcement counterparts. The bipartisan H.R. 1322, the Law Enforcement Officers Equity Act, takes steps towards creating that equity. In granting these dedicated federal employees their earned retirement benefits, VA stands to create a significant gap in institutional knowledge and expertise at the hands of resolvable issues like pay and benefits. That is extremely distressing considering our veterans and VA providers rely on adequate security in order to access care and perform their responsibilities. I urge my colleagues in the Committee on Oversight and Accountability to work with me to advance this bill. Further, oversight performed by the Government Accountability Office and VA's Office of Inspector General have identified serious deficiencies in risk management efforts and actual physical security outcomes. Both entities have indicated that the VA lacks a comprehensive security strategy. VA also has a convoluted and decentralized governance structure. This has led to a lack of understanding of what is required of both frontline workers and security administrators. VA has reportedly begun the process to develop these documents, but we have not yet received an update or plans of implementation. Recent events, such as the tragedies in Atlanta and Kansas City, underscore the need for increased attention to policies, regulations, and trainings so we can strengthen VA security. I am extremely concerned about the reports that only 1/3 of VA police have completed their required suicide prevention training. This Congress, this subcommittee, has considered legislative proposals to update weapons detection technology at VA facilities across the enterprise. I have been and continue to be supportive of the efforts to create a safer VA. However, I believe these proposals must be driven first and foremost by veterans and what they need to help them feel safe at VA facilities. We should also ensure that veterans feel that they can access their care with ease. We need to work with VA providers and security personnel to understand what solutions will empower them to perform their job fully and safely. Finally, we must study and incorporate best practices into VA security strategies. I look forward to hearing from the healthcare providers, the organizations here today, on these efforts. This week, we learned that VA has taken steps to start piloting this technology at VA medical centers across the country. While I support VA taking proactive steps to improve safety and security at its facilities, I am concerned that this is the first time we're hearing about this pilot. To my knowledge, VA has not yet brought veterans along with this change either. I look forward to sitting down with VSOs to hear what veterans want and need to make them feel safer at all VA facilities. I urge the VA to do the same. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Mervan. We will now turn to witness testimony. Testifying before us today on our first panel, we have from the VA Mr. Alfred Montoya, the Deputy Assistant Undersecretary for Health Operations at the VA. We have Mr. Troy Brown, Senior Security Officer at the VA. We have Ms. Brady Soda, the Chief of Police, Little Rock Veteran Affairs Medical Center. Mr. George Chester, Chief of Police, Detroit, Michigan Veterans Affairs Medical Center. And from the AFGE, the 2012 VA Police Officer of the Year, Mr. Brian Hunt, AFGE President Local 2384. Will the witnesses please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. Mr. Montoya, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to provide your testimony.
Chairwoman Kiggins, Ranking Member Mervan, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to join you during National Police Week to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs, law enforcement, and how Congress can best support VA personnel in their efforts to serve and protect our veterans, employees, and visitors on VA property. Your past support has been imperative in ensuring we accomplish our mission, and we look forward to continuing that close collaboration. I am joined today by Chiefs Troy Brown, VA's Senior Security Officer, Brandy Soto of Little Rock, Arkansas, George Chester of Detroit, Michigan, and I would also like to recognize Chief Troy Covington of Martinsburg, West Virginia, and Major Mark Moran, a physical security specialist, who are seated behind me. The VA police force is crucial in securing VA facilities through specialized law enforcement. Its role is multifaceted, encompassing law enforcement, security, and public safety responsibilities across VA medical centers, regional offices, and other facilities nationwide. Officers Jason Ledbetter and Chief Gene Parker at the Kansas City VA exemplify that role. Without hesitation, they put themselves directly in harm's way to safely disarm a veteran with a loaded pistol. His finger on the trigger, the hammer cocked. Because of their quick action, professionalism, and compassion, they got that veteran to surrender, and he was later admitted to receive the mental health care he needed. Our officers are highly trained to handle various situations from patrols and emergency responses to crisis intervention, while prioritizing the needs of veterans. We strive for open, secure facilities while balancing visitor access, threats, policies, and standards. Adequate security requires planning to protect people, resources, and property, prevent theft, and use aids like security screenings and body cameras. The Federal Law Enforcement Accreditation Board certifies the VA's Law Enforcement Training Center, which offers a variety of courses for students and staff. VA has also partnered with law enforcement agencies and other government organizations, including the National Institutes of Health, the Department of Commerce, the Army, the Navy, and bureaus of prison. Each of our officers is also proudly outfitted with body cameras, which protect the rights and well-beings of veterans and staff members and foster a culture of trust and professionalism within the VA community. By capturing critical incidents and interactions, these cameras provide valuable insights that can inform training, policies, and decision-making processes, ultimately ensuring a safer and more secure environment for all individuals at VA facilities. VA Police faces challenges in recruiting qualified law enforcement candidates due to competition and negative perceptions. To address this, VA has a dedicated recruiting team that uses local initiatives, virtual events, and marketing campaigns to position itself as an employer of choice. Ensuring competitive pay to attract and retain qualified personnel is challenging, as discrepancies between agencies or regions can lead to retention issues. Federal law enforcement follows the General Schedule or GS pay scale, with entry-level officers beginning at grades 5 or 6, and more experienced and supervisory staff at higher grades. Officers can progress through pay steps within their grade and locality pay, and availability pay apply as appropriate. Pay parity and equity are crucial. Regular market analyses and salary surveys can align compensation with industry standards. Fiscal year 22 saw difficulties in recruitment and retention, so the VA developed a shortage occupation blueprint for VA police to maximize incentives and implement referral programs. The number of police officers in VA increased by 7.4% in fiscal year 23 and 5.1% in fiscal year 24. Currently, there are 4,254 officers on the force. The retention efforts in FY24 show a positive trend, with losses being 20% less than in FY23 and 25% less than in FY22. Our informed and intentional retention efforts have directly impacted hundreds of officers' decisions to remain in the VA police force, such as officers Kara Morton, Timothy Statton, Jerome Bell, and Gwendolyn Smith at the Durham VA Medical Center. These extraordinary officers answered the call of a terrified veteran's wife whose husband, a veteran in crisis, had overdosed in their car while sitting in a parking garage. They saved that veteran's life thanks to their compassion and quick action. Their actions exemplified the VA police force's commitment to ensuring a safe and secure environment for veterans, employees, and visitors alike. In closing, VA is firmly committed to enhancing our capabilities through ongoing training, modernization, and resource allocation. The proposed FY25 budget will support these efforts and enable us to attract the best talent, invest in technology, and foster stronger partnerships. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My team and I look forward to responding to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Mr. Hunt, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to provide your testimony.
Chairwoman Kiggins, Ranking Member Mervan, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting AFGE to participate in today's hearing. My name is Brian Hunt, and I serve as the president of AFGE Local 2384 at the Lewis A. Johnson VA Medical Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. I am a U.S. Army combat veteran who proudly served our country during Operation Iraqi Freedom and the global war on terrorism. I am a service-connected veteran who both works and receives my health care at the VA. Additionally, for 12 of my 17 years at the VA, I served as a VA police officer, including being named VA Police Officer of the Year in 2012. On behalf of AFGE and its National Veterans Affairs Council, representing 304,000 VA employees, it is a privilege to testify today. Specifically, I plan to focus my testimony on the approximately 2,500 VA police officers AFGE represents, 90% of whom are veterans themselves. AFGE has several recommendations for the subcommittee that can help the VA with recruitment and retention for VA police and help it better serve veterans. The single most effective action that Congress can take to help with the recruitment and retention of the VA police force is to extend law enforcement officer, or LEO, status to VA police. The current definition of a law enforcement officer relied upon in U.S. Code for LEO retirement does not include VA police. In turn, VA police do not receive retirement benefits on par with federal law enforcement officers at other agencies. AFGE strongly supports H.R. 1322, the Law Enforcement Officers Equity Act, which would grant these benefits to VA police. This bipartisan bill currently has 83 co-sponsors, including Chairman Bost, Ranking Member Takano, Ranking Member Mervan, Representative Pappas, and 5 other committee members. Providing full LEO status to VA police would significantly help the VA police with recruitment and retention. Currently, the VA hires new recruits, sends them to the VA Law Enforcement Training Center, and then sees these officers depart the VA for police positions with other agencies that do have these benefits or to state or local departments. Granting full LEO status to VA police will diminish this turnover, help the VA maintain a stronger and better trained police department with higher morale. Additionally, it is important to note that at a hearing before the subcommittee a year ago, Tracy Therrett, the VA's Chief Human Capital Officer, stated the VA very much supports the Law Enforcement Officer Equity Act. Speaking from my own experience, after serving 12 years with the VA Police, I reluctantly took another position at my VA Medical Center. This position offered higher pay and room for advancement. And to be frank, if the VA Police received LEO benefits, I would not have left my position. I would still be a VA police officer today, protecting my fellow veterans. The VA Police have a mission to protect those who served, and I am proud to have been a part of that mission. The VA needs to recruit and retain a young and viable police force where future officers are not faced with a difficult decision that I had to make for me and my family. I urge members of this committee to co-sponsor H.R. 1322 and support its passage. Next, the VA needs to improve the staffing levels of VA police to address documented severe shortages. To address this, VA has created GS7 senior police officer positions, and AFG urges VA to continue to improve upward mobility. Furthermore, AFG also supports changing statute to allow federal police officers to advance from GS7 to GS9 without a year as a GS8, which is currently required. AFG is also concerned about the broad discretion local facility management has in its police department budget. AFG has heard reports that some directors are intentionally characterizing their facilities in ways that justify having a smaller police force than what is required. We urge the VA to enforce its staffing models consistently. Furthermore, AFG wants to highlight that VA police are funded from the same budgets as other medical center personnel. Medical center directors are forced to choose between hiring medical professionals or police officers. AFG believes the committee and VA should consider a dedicated funding source for VA police to ensure that veterans protection is not a second-tier funding priority. Finally, one of the key strengths of the VA police is the level of training officers must undergo to serve the veteran population, including crisis intervention training. This training is an extremely important and specialized investment that is intended to save lives. However, the high attrition rates of VA police who undergo this training puts an added strain on the VA resources when considering cost of training. This is exemplified by the LETC charging over $14,000 for a VA police officer standard training course taken out of the medical center's budget and does not include the crisis intervention training required by VA Compact Act. AFG urges the committee to study how much VA spends on training, as well as a breakdown of costs for officers who leave shortly after receiving training. Additionally, the VA should calculate how it can save money by providing LEO benefits and improved use of special salary rates and retention bonuses. Improving retention would reduce the need for the VA to repeatedly provide training to new officers who are backfilling positions due to poor retention. AFG looks forward to working with the subcommittee to improve the recruitment, retention, and morale of the VA police. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. We will now move to questions, and I yield myself 5 minutes. Chief Soto, I'm glad to hear there's been a small uptick in VA police officers nationwide. Have the VA's efforts helped with recruitment and retention in Little Rock?
Thank you for that question, Madam. So our Recruitment efforts have definitely improved in Little Rock with our efforts to be able to offer the relocation incentives, the recruitment incentives, the benefit of having a CSI option. That definitely improved us as well. We go out and we market and search for those great candidates to be able to come and join our police force. So short answer, yes, ma'am, they have. The retention is a problem when it comes to them being here in Little Rock. We have to offer more of a better benefit to be able to keep them in our ranks as opposed to them jumping to Little Rock Department or North Little Rock Department or a civil or federal agency. Part of the argument that Mr. Hunt, I definitely appreciate that, and what Ranking Member Marvin specified when it comes to retention and retirement. That's a very, very important tool that we need to be able to keep them on board, as well as training, giving them their training. It's a benefit for us in Little Rock because we have LATC, the Law Enforcement Training Center, right next door. So we're able to give them our, with the support from our Medical Center Director, we're able to give them the opportunities to go and be trained at the Law Enforcement Training Center.
Is the VA police force having the same problems that some of our civilian police forces have, where they're kind of robbing or trading with each other for positions? Are you in the mix?
Yes, ma'am. We usually say we steal from Peter to pay Paul. We definitely use that analogy. I've lost several good officers to our local civilian law enforcement. I've lost several good officers to the Parks Department, different types of federal agencies, because they are well-trained. They're very experienced. In Little Rock, I have a dual campus, so they're able to get that experience under their belt, and then they get advertised out, and they go and improve their work-life balance in a different agency.
We just don't have enough. And Chief Chester, along those same lines, how about in Detroit? What have you been seeing?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The thing is that we have had a chance to improve our recruitment because of the SSR. So compared to Detroit Police Department that received a raise, we were able to look at our SSR, get an increase in our SSR to retain some of our officers, because prior to that, I did lose some officers to go to other police agencies within our community.
Okay, good. And Mr. Hunt, let's see, congrats, first of all, on being honored as the VA Police Officer of the Year. We're happy to have you here. I'm glad you're still working at the VA, but I'm sure the VA Police would have loved to have kept you. And I know you talked a little bit about some of the things that, the reasons you left, and the law enforcement officer's status, and some of the benefits, and perhaps better pay and career growth opportunities for you. But what would you say is the number one reform needed to keep quality police officers like yourself in the police force?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I would say the single most are the 6E LEO benefits. We just cannot, the VA can just not compete with other federal agencies. When these officers get on with the VA, they realize that, frankly, they're getting a raw deal because they can go to every federal agency and get these benefits, and they start shopping around.
We'll work on that. And then how about Mr. Brown? Before my Senate colleagues engaged you about compliance with the Compact Act and its required suicide prevention training, it's my understanding that a large majority of VA police officers lacked the necessary training. What are you doing to rectify this and make sure they get that important training?
Madam Chairwoman, thank you for the question. Recently, we redesigned our training modules for crisis intervention training. We have posted it on a SharePoint, our talent management system, in order for us to better aggregate the data and be able to provide that data. We do believe that our data was low when we initially responded to those questions. However, we had to develop ways to make sure we can collect that data and provide accurate information. So we have a series of different things that are happening where we're requiring the medical center directors and network directors to respond in attestation that they have ensured that that training has been completed. Those responses are due early June, and we have a requirement for all training for not only the 083 police officers, the 4,200 that Mr. Al Montoya quoted, but all 6,000 employees, including the chiefs, the deputy chiefs, and the supervisory ranks. And so we anticipate for that training to be completed before the end of the fiscal year. It requires an interactive exercise with our community law enforcement and our community partners, social work and mental health. And so while many police officers have completed the training, the modules, they are coordinating the effort to get the community engagement interactive exercise completed as well.
Who actually conducts that training?
It will be the police officers, our mental health partners, our social work partners, along with the community partners in the same occupational series or occupation as in law enforcement, mental health, and social work as well.
And part of it includes a simulation.
Yes, ma'am.
Experience,
Tabletop
okay.
simulations,
Yeah.
coordination, yes, ma'am.
Do you feel like the training is effective?
Yeah, so the training is in addition to what we're leaning towards in a full effort, which is having each police officer certified in crisis intervention through CIT International. That is a larger accomplishment that we need to work to achieve. Meanwhile, while we're working towards the industry standard of crisis intervention training certification and/or instructors, we have the CIT training modules that we have vetted through CIT International. It includes behavioral health, suicide prevention, deflection training, de-escalation training. Every police officer who attends the Law Enforcement Training Center as a new incumbent has to complete that training. Every police officer will receive that training annually, and we will also push towards the certifications and instructor certifications as well.
Good. Thank you very much for that answer. And now I will yield 5 minutes to Ranking Member Mervan.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Montoya, the VA data indicated that the average vacancy rate across the VISN for the Department of Police Officer is about 31%. How does that compare to other occupational series across the VA?
Yeah, Ranking Member Mervan, thank you for that question. You know, I think when we look at the vacancy rate for our police officers, this is one where it is trending in the right direction. Right now, we're actually seeing that at about 22.1%. As far as how it compares to other occupations, I'll have to take that one back to the record to be able to provide to the committee. One thing, though, that I'm very proud about right now is that this last quarter, our quit rate amongst VA police officers is at about 1.2%. And so I think we're really on track to having that quit rate be less than 6% if we keep along those lines, which last year that quit rate was just about 8%.
And then to follow up, what has the VA learned from the exit surveys from departing police officers, and are there any trends in terms of reason why police officers are leaving VA?
Yeah, so that's, again, an excellent question. I think, you know, I'll turn back to my previous experience as a medical center director, where I actually met with police officers as they were deciding to leave federal service, really asked them why. Why, you know, with a mission such as the VA, why would you leave? And many times it was based on pay. It was based on opportunities related to pay. For those specific exit survey questions, I would actually like to turn to Chief Brown, who I think could answer that.
Yes, sir. Ranking Member Mervin. What we noticed in 2018 when assuming this position as a new role in VA, we realized that we needed to modernize the police force. And in old Marine Corps terminology, we thought that it would be best to tear the current system down to the ground and restart. And so what we created was a modernization effort for each police officer to be able to grow from a GS-5 for the lower level, those who had minimum experience, to a GS-15, as well as having varying pathways in different directions between training, physical security, criminal investigations, and operations, to give them an opportunity to be, to use a path in their experience and what they desire to grow within the organization. And what we're learning is that that created an opportunity for them. People are retained. We are able to send police officers to training outside of Law Enforcement Training Center. We have a new partnership with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center as well in FLETC. We have a partnership with DOD for our Skill Bridge program, where we go into the military within the 6 months of a military personnel ETS and recruit and retain them into the police department, and we actually send them to a place that they desire to live, and we place them in an area that they want to live in with their family. So it's a transition in military skill bridge program that we're instituting. We're doing many things to be attractive, moving towards 21st century law enforcement. We're building the ecosystem around the troops, having those resources that they desire. We're moving in towards energy weapons. We want to make sure that they understand the decision they have to make before they send a bullet down range, and we want to make sure that we have industry standard training available for the troops and be able to provide those resources for them so they can want to stay and they want to grow within the VA system.
Mr. Hunt, thank you for sharing your experience with the committee, and thank you for your service to the VA. We greatly appreciate you being here today. Can you share again why you decided to leave the VA police force?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, basically, I was taking stock of my career. I'd been at the VA for 12 years. I enjoyed being a VA police officer. It is, we've all stated, it's an honorable mission. But as I was taking into account the type of job, the things, the requirements, what you're putting, the nature of the work, and you realize that your pay and benefits are the same as the other employees, and outside at that time outside the VA police, there was a more opportunity for advancement to move up in your career. That opportunity wasn't there, and I made the decision that based on that to move on. I didn't want to leave the VA. As a veteran, I love working at the VA and serving veterans, so I tried to stay within the VA, but I had to move out of the police service in order to advance my career.
If I could, the H.R. 1322, the Law Enforcement Officers Equity Act, which I am proud to be a co-sponsor, expands the definition of federal law enforcement officer to include VA police officers. This would finally correct the inequity between the VA and the federal law enforcement personnel with their retirement benefits. Can you speak to how this legislation may help the retention of the VA police officers?
Yes, thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, as I stated earlier, we bring high-quality officers on. We put them through this excellent training. The new officers, sometimes they don't know these 60 benefits exist or maybe new to the federal police force. They get on the VA police, we train them, we season them, and then they come to realize, like I said earlier, that they're kind of getting a raw deal because their other federal officer counterparts are receiving these other benefits that they do not, and then they begin looking to those agencies.
Thank you very much. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now yields 5 minutes to General Bergman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and a perfect week, since it's National Police Week, to have all of you in here. And I know there must be at least one Marine in the crowd, because you referenced the Marine Corps. And how many military? All Marines? Navy? Army? Air Force? All right. No space cadets in there yet, right? Oh, Space Guardians, I'm sorry. All right, well, thanks to all of you and your understanding of security beyond the level of what you're doing now, because you got some good training in your respective services, and, the responsibility for 400,000 VA employees and roughly 7 million annual patients. I'm not going to be parochial on this, but I want to use as an example Lower Michigan. So, Chief Chester, you're at Dingle, yes? Or you at Ann Arbor?
Detroit, sir. John D. Dingle.
Dingle, okay, so you're at Dingle, you're downtown Detroit. We've got Ann Arbor, VA, we've got Battle Creek, and we got Saginaw in the lower peninsula. Okay, we won't even talk about Iron Mountain because, that's a long distance. When it comes to your ability to recruit and, more importantly, retain, let's assume for the sake of discussion here that you get a good police officer who, let's say they're at Dingle and they want to move. They want to go up to Saginaw, or they want to go to Battle Creek, or they want to go west. Do you have the ability to transfer people? Is there a program that exists? Again, this is more about retention than it is anybody else. Is that a real thing, or do we need to consider making it a real thing, or how's that help you?
Yes, sir. That is a real thing, and we do have officers that transfer. If I have a vacancy, I would post it. Thing is that they can apply, or we do have a direct hires where we can do a direct hires where that person can reach out to us and submit their resume. I can look at it, and then from there, it is submitted to HR, is where they do resume review, and if they meet that criteria, they can transfer to our facility. And I'm not sure if Mr. Montoya has something else that he would like to add.
Yeah, so General Bergman, it's always good to see you. So we do have those authorities in place right now to be able to move officers, should they wish to, from facility to facility across VA.
When you do that, And when you talk about standardization of training, standardization of procedures, if they went from, let's say, Dingle to Ann Arbor to Saginaw to Battle Creek, using that example, would they see the same SOPs?
Yeah, so they generally would see the same SOPs, and I think what's great about this example that you're using as well is that the organizational structure from VA Police to VA Police Department is the same, right? And so that is a standardized approach that Chief Brown was able to roll out and really push across all VA police departments across the country.
So how do we then, if we can transfer within, and you've got your if you will, your career force, are we able to be, where are the limiting factors in VA police force being competitive when, let's say, Detroit Police or Ann Arbor Police or, Saginaw Police or Battle Creek Police to, keep going down that road? Are we competing, are we losing people to those police departments?
Yes, sir. As we are, thing is that we do lose people to those police agencies because part of the issue is, just say for instance, with a Detroit Police Department, they go from a starting entry pay to top pay within 5 years. With us, there is the steps where it takes almost 18 years to get to a step 10. So that is part of the issue also. So like we may have a new officer that comes on before he reached top pay to a GS6 step 10 is 18 years. For a Detroit police officer, for him to go from entry level to top pay is 5 years. That is part of the issue. So that's why we're losing some of our police officers that come on board. They get well trained, they're highly marketable, but then they go to some other agencies where they can reach top pay in 5 years.
Okay, well, thank you. I see my time is about up. I think we may have an opportunity in using the 4 examples of the VA hospitals to do kind of a comparison with recruiting and retention when it comes to competing with the other law enforcement agencies. With that, thank you again for all you do, and still doing it with a smile on your face and helping those vets. And I yield back.
Thank you, General Bergman. The chair now yields 5 minutes to Mr. Pappas.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. It's good to see you all here. Thank you all for your service and for what you do for veterans each and every day. Mr. Montoya, thanks for your testimony here. And I have to say, you still have a lot of fans in New Hampshire. We're grateful for the job that you did at the Manchester VA. And I think you have a unique perspective here to offer, and it came out in that last exchange, just as someone who's been a medical center director, who has worked with a variety of different personnel at VA, including our police forces. And so we appreciate your contributions to this discussion. Mr. Hunt, maybe I could turn to you, and I think what you provided the committee was perhaps one of the best examples of just testimony on the unique role of the VA police force. And I'm wondering if you could chat a little bit more with us about the training that prepares recruits to come into this unique situation. Do you feel that it's adequate, and are there any other tools that Congress can help provide as we think specifically about the issue of veteran suicide to help equip our VA police officers with what they see each and every day?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, the thing that comes to mind for me are mental hygiene hold orders. Those vary by state. In West Virginia, for example, where I worked, if there was a suicidal veteran and the staff reports to me as a police officer or even other staff, hey, this veteran, he's threatening suicide, he's leaving, he's walking out the door. I do not have as a VA police officer or any police officer really in West Virginia, have the authority to stop him from leaving, and neither do the staff. So, because in West Virginia specifically, it requires a mental hygiene order from a mental hygiene commissioner. Once that's issued, then we can go intervene with the veteran. But at that point, there may have been a tragedy may have taken place. So if there was some type of legislation that the VA could use VA-wide, how to handle hold orders for suicidal veterans, I think that would be a great tool for the veterans, the police, and the staff.
I appreciate that. And you mentioned in your testimony the expense of sending new officers to the Law Enforcement Training Center, and that's a cost and an investment that's lost if an officer leaves say within the first few weeks or first few months of their service. And I'm wondering if it's reasonable to believe that other investments, like in retirement benefits, some of the other provisions that you mentioned in your testimony, are smart with respect to the retention issue that we're struggling with.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, I would. The short answer is yes. Higher retention rate equals less money being spent on training. And I said earlier that money comes from the VA Medical Center's budget. So the higher the retention at the hospital, the more money the hospital has to spend out of its own budget to send the police officers to be trained. So yes, in my opinion, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Montoya, I don't know if you want to reflect on that at all in terms of where we stand with retention in particular. Have we seen any progress being made in terms of the statistics the last few years?
Yeah, so Congressman Pappas, it's also good to see you. It's been a long time, but certainly enjoyed my time there up in New Hampshire. So in my oral testimony, I referenced our retention efforts and the work that has happened so far. I actually think that we're doing quite a good job since 2022. When we think back to 22, it was a hard recruitment and retention time for VA police officers. Thanks to Troy Brown and the chiefs all coming together doing the blueprint for VA police, it really allowed us to bring forward those tools that we needed to decrease the retention. And so what we have now is 7.4%. So our police officers increased by 7.4% in FY23, 5.1% in FY24. And when we look at retention in FY24, it showed a positive trend with losses being 20% less than FY23. Now compare that to 22, and it's actually 25% less. And so it definitely shows that the blueprint that has been created along with the recruitment and retention tools is definitely making an impact.
Well, thanks for that. And I hope you'd also agree that some of the other provisions that Mr. Hunt talked about, some of the legislation that's pending, could also move the needle with respect to recruitment and retention.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, both in my role now and in my previous role as a medical center director, is that you have to use all the tools in your toolbox to be able to recruit and retain your staff. And so whether that be the special incentives or retention or special salary rates, certainly everything that we have available is what we're throwing at the retention issues and recruitment issues that we have. And so certainly anything extra would help towards that retention.
Well, thanks very much. And Mr. Brown, you had mentioned about some responses that were due in June. I know I'm out of time now, but just to highlight that I'd certainly be interested in seeing that along with the other subcommittee members here.
Yes, Congressman.
Thanks very much. I yield back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The chair now yields 5 minutes to Mr. Luttrell.
Mr. Chester, Ms. Soto, chiefs of police at your medical facilities, you're the senior officers at those places, correct? Who is your touch point when you go up into the organization at Veterans Affairs? Would that be Mr. Brown?
You go through our business chiefs, and it ultimately goes to Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, you're the ultimate touch point in Veterans Affairs?
Yes, sir.
Do you communicate down and inside the organizations at every single VA facility across the country?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
We have, out of 4,500 officers across the country, roughly 1,300 completed the suicide prevention awareness.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about crisis intervention that they have to perform annually,
yes, sir.
Do you have the numbers with you on how many officers have completed the crisis intervention program to date?
Yes, sir. As I mentioned earlier, every VA police officer, a new incumbent, has to complete the CIT training during the post course, the police officer standardized training course.
But if they do it annually, so they have to do it every single year, even the current police officers?
Current police officers the hard number is 1,295, which we responded to. Also, we had just
1,295 for suicide prevention. Is crisis intervention and suicide prevention the same thing?
It's included in the module, sir. Yes, sir. Our behavioral health sciences and suicide prevention is all combined inside of our law enforcement training center training during their police officers training certification. It's a 400-hour certification course to become a police officer.
So at the VA facility that's in my district, I get a lot of feedback from my veterans about red flag laws.
Yes, sir.
Inside the VA. Who's responsible for creating the red flag laws that exist inside the VA and in each individual medical center? Mr. Montoya?
Yes, sir, I'll have to take that question for the record and come back to you.
we don't have a name for this specific.
So I actually don't know who creates the red flag, sir. I know exactly what you're talking about in medical records, but I don't know the person that does that.
Okay, so because I see this, and I in absolute respect in your services, and thank you for both sides, military and now, and I can only imagine the complexities of everything that you deal with every single day. But when I see the numbers of the absence of training when it comes to crisis intervention, and you're dealing with a veteran in distress, okay, and these red flag laws, and I've been trying to get to the bottom of them myself, and I want to talk to the person directly responsible for creating those regulations. Okay, Mr. Montoya, if you can get me that answer, I'd really appreciate it, because I see a systemic, I don't know if it's systemic, but I see a problem in my area that the red flag law seems to be, once they're hung, they're never unhung. And I have veterans that are sometimes in duress when they're engaging in the veteran community, in the VA facility, and obviously the ones that they're going to engage with are the officers. So if the officers aren't completely trained up on crisis intervention, are they engaging with those veterans correctly? And that is a problem. And I want to make sure that that problem goes away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it totally makes sense, sir, and we certainly will come back to you with the information you request.
I would love to have the answer next week if you don't mind.
I will
Because I can
try.
assure
I will
you, when
try
I
my
go
hardest.
home, every time I go home, I can promise you I have some wonderful individuals in my district that make sure that this is the one thing that I'm engaging with as a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. And I want to get to the bottom of this so I can answer their question thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Because if the red flags is something that, if we don't have a sound, concrete answer on exactly how this is playing out, and it's different in every facility, that's a bad thing. Okay?
Yeah, so I will tell you, I'm going to put on my hat as a former medical center director, and so I do recall, actually, at all the medical centers that I was at, that there was a disruptive behavior committee. All of the instances that come up from a veteran that may have a potential flag or does have a flag goes through that DBC, is what it's called, that has clinicians on it, providers on that, and they make that decision based on all of the information that they have in that veteran's.
And a single red flag can last 2 years, correct?
It actually can be removed from the record, and it just, the process to be able to do that is to go back through that disruptive behavior committee to be able to have them look at it again to make sure that there's not a threat.
Okay. Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luttrell. The chair now recognizes Mr. Rosendale for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for coming in today. Really do appreciate it. I'm proud to support law enforcement and believe that the VA law enforcement plays an essential role in ensuring the security of veterans and the VA facilities. We've seen a troubling increase in crime at VA facilities despite the number of veterans frequenting VA facilities having gone down due to telehealth and care in the community. Policing is a hard job that requires courage, strength, and grit. And I have seen firsthand the important work that police officers in Montana and across the country do to make our community safer. Additionally, we must ensure that police officers' Second Amendment rights are not being infringed upon when they receive health care at the VA facilities. I'm working on legislation that would bolster the Second Amendment rights of all citizens at the VA, whether they be private citizens or law enforcement, as a direct result of requests from patients that are currently attending there. They think that their rights are being infringed upon, and we've recognized that they actually have been. And there's those who would try to make it even more difficult for the patients to be able to feel comfortable in exercising their Second Amendment rights. Mr. Brown, the testimony that you provided mentioned negative media coverage and public sentiment towards law enforcement can deter individuals from pursuing careers in policing. Mr. Montoya also stated negative perception as a major hurdle in maintaining an adequate law enforcement presence at the VA, and I'm sure that this also contributes to the 8% quit rate that you also referenced. So I've just got a couple of simple questions for you, Mr. Brown. Do you think rhetoric calling for defunding the police harms recruitment?
The word defunding seems harmful. And
Okay.
there's a
Do
misunderstanding.
you think that saying, and I quote, law enforcement doesn't protect or save lives, they often threaten and take them?
I don't agree.
Arms recruiting?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you think that someone saying law enforcement doesn't protect or save lives, they often threaten and take them? Do you think that that statement harms recruiting?
It does.
Okay. Do you think saying policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist harms recruiting efforts?
Absolutely.
Do you think district attorneys deciding not to prosecute armed robberies and allowing violent criminals to remain on the street, arms recruiting?
Absolutely.
Okay, I really appreciate that. Would you also agree that it's reprehensible that these are all quotes and actions that have been taken by prominent Democrat politicians in the past few years?
I would agree with politicians.
We should be praising law enforcement, not tearing them down. Mr. Brown, I've heard several complaints that when VA medical centers spend tens of thousands of dollars to send new officers to a law enforcement training center in Arkansas, if they do return to the same medical center, the VA medical center at all, they are often dejected and looking for another opportunity. Do you think that law enforcement training center is somewhat responsible for VA's abysmal retention stats?
Yeah, I'd like to respond. Thank you for the question. We have recently looked at the Law Enforcement Training Center, partnered with them as our educational institution, modified the training institution. In FY25, we will have them expand their territory from Little Rock to other parts of the country where training is needed. And when that team goes out to those areas, we have reduced the amount of expense or cost to the course.
Sure. So do you think that rather than just going out and building a new mousetrap, if you will, that if there's adequate or equal training can be undertaken in other parts of the country, that's easier for officers to attend and less costly for the VA medical centers to send them to? Shouldn't that be able to be utilized?
Yes, sir. We're on our second pilot as we stand today. In Orlando, the second group of police officers in this pilot will graduate June the 5th.
Good deal. Thank you very much for your answers. And again, thank the committee very much for the panel for coming in today. And I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendale, and thank you so much again to our first panel of witnesses for coming today. I appreciate the candor in your testimony and your willingness to participate. And I just, again, a very happy National Police Week to all of you. Thank you so much for your service, not only in the military, but to our veterans. We really appreciate you all being here and taking the time to travel. I call the committee to a 2-minute recess, and we'll prepare for our second panel. Thank you again for our panel for being here today. Testifying before us on our second panel, we have Mr. Kapua Conley, the Regional President of Sentara Healthcare based out of Hampton, Virginia. Mr. Chuck Dowd, the Vice President of the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association. And Mr. John Retzer, the Assistant National Legislative Director for Disabled American Veterans. Will the witnesses please stand and raise their right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. And let the record reflect that the witnesses answer in the affirmative. Mr. Conley, I appreciate you coming here from Hampton Roads. You are now recognized for 5 minutes to provide your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Keegans, members of the committee. Thank you for the privilege of addressing you today on one of Sentara Health's top priorities, the safety of our employees, patients, and all the visitors who walk into our facilities. My name is Kapua Conley, Regional President for Sentara Health. Sentara is an integrated delivery network with 12 hospitals in the Mid-Atlantic, a health plan and more than 30,000 employees. Our largest hospital is 11-1 Trauma Center, just miles from Naval Station, Norfolk, and we serve many active duty veterans and their families. Keeping our employees, patients, and visitors safe is a responsibility we take very seriously, as you will hear from my comments today. From my perspective, security is both a feeling and a reality, and they're not the same. Making our employees and patients feel safe is just as important as keeping them safe. The statistics around workplace safety and healthcare in the healthcare environment are staggering. We know that healthcare workers are 5 times more likely to experience violence compared to those in any other private profession. Outside of law enforcement, the emergency department is the second most dangerous workplace. The U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics found that healthcare workers account for 73% of injuries from workplace violence. The threat to nurses, physicians, and other healthcare workers has been on the rise since 2011. Those statistics are a reality on the front lines of healthcare. 64 handguns, 1,204 knives, 158 box cutters, 84 tasers, and 2 machetes. This is an inventory of weapons intercepted at the doors of emergency departments in just 2 Sentara hospitals within the past year. In total, security personnel have prevented nearly 2,484 weapons from entering Sentara Norfolk General and Sentara Virginia Beach General Hospitals during that time. Our security team seeks to first prevent and deter violence within our facilities. Second, we seek to protect our employees, patients, and visitors from harm or injury should a violent incident occur. To prevent and deter violence, Sentara has implemented sophisticated state-of-the-art concealed weapon detection systems. Over the next 2 years, every hospital will have the system in place. When our CEO, Dennis Mathis, sat down with some of our frontline employees to discuss this initiative, he was concerned about pushback, as hospitals are havens of healing. One nurse reminded Dennis that our children walk through metal detectors every day going to school. This is now our new norm. In addition, Sentara has implemented a visitor management system. This allows us to know who is entering our facility and whether they are authorized to do so, reducing criminal acts and workplace violence. Also, in addition to the thousands of cameras located throughout our hospitals, we have personal duress alarms and a new emergency notification system to better communicate with our teams and take proactive action. All frontline employees are trained on de-escalation, and Sentara has implemented cutting-edge active shooter training, including full-scale active shooter drill involving all our emergency services community partners. To ensure the highest level of safety, Sentara recognizes the need to be proactive and not reactive. Each and every member of our team is critical to the safety of all. This responsibility to keep each other safe is ingrained in our culture and built into our daily protocols, training, and technology. Every nurse has a capability and responsibility to flag patient medical records for individuals who exhibit threatening behavior. Our support staff follow the buddy system when serving these patients. Security patrols keep a close watch on units with potentially violent patients, and they make sure the flags on our electronic medical records match signage on the units. Patient flags are evaluated every 12 hours and removed if a patient is no longer a threat. Multidisciplinary core threat assessment teams in each division review all workplace violent incidences, ensure use of flags, analyze trends and root causes, and recommend additional training and protocols to maximize safety. These teams rally on short notice when there is an urgent need for a coordinated and decisive response to potential threats. Our in-house security professionals are essential to our strategic approach to safety. Sentara is training an elite team of security officers to receive certification by the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, and we are implementing video magistrate rooms that permit police and staff to directly link with the magistrate to provide evidence and swear out arrest warrants in real time for a criminal event that has or may occur. In conclusion, a year-over-year review has showed that we have dramatically decreased workplace violence by 19%. This proves that a comprehensive strategic approach towards safety can positively impact the well-being of our employees and our patients that we serve. Again, security is both a feeling and a reality, and they're not the same. This needs to be taken in consideration when we're looking at our own veterans' medical facilities. Sentara stands ready to collaborate and to partner with the VA system on how to best assess, support, and implement best practices in safety and security in these facilities. We have made an investment in safety which has returns beyond a dollar amount. I hope the VA system will do the same. I'm happy to take any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Mr. Dowd, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to provide your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member. I'm Chuck Dowd. I'm a retired Assistant Chief from the New York City Police Department. I did 34 and a half years there, the last 12 and a half years as I ran the New York City 911 system and all things communications. I am now a part of the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, which is comprised of the nation's leading public safety executives and associations of all professional backgrounds. Of our leaders all include extensive experience with and knowledge of technology related to public safety. Our diverse group of executives understand public safety needs and requirements, and most importantly, in the context of this hearing, those related to public safety communications. In 2012, Congress passed legislation to create a nationwide public safety broadband network. That is known as FirstNet, and it exists today. It is run and managed by U.S. Department of Commerce and the FirstNet Authority, which exists inside Commerce. It has been a tremendous success in my view. They have close to 6 million members of public safety utilizing the network today, and 26,000 public safety organizations. Modern technology for communications today, one of the difficulties that we were experiencing during September 11th and those kinds of events was the simple fact that we couldn't communicate with each other. Interoperability was always problematic. We operated kind of in geographic bubbles where we could interoperate. But ultimately, when you went beyond that bubble, there was no capability of communications. It's been well documented the difficulties during September 11th between the police department and the fire department unable to communicate with each other. FirstNet, in my view, solves that problem. The Public Safety Broadband Association exists to help support all public safety organizations in utilizing the technology that's been developed that can be run through that FirstNet network that's a nationwide network. And when it comes to the VA, I understand they are using FirstNet, but I also believe that it is a capability that can be further used because there are so many capabilities, so many applications that can be used on FirstNet that could be used towards making communications for the VA far more successful than they even are today. I know that in our experience in New York City, a very complex communications environment for public safety, dozens of public safety agencies, either state, federal, or local, functioning inside the city of New York or operating inside New York. We were of the position and always allowed for those agencies to operate on our frequencies as long as they followed a few simple guidelines. And that's something that could be replicated every place else. If the VA police are struggling with communications with their public safety partners locally, That's something that the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association can help with. One of the things that needs to happen in order for that to be successful and critical, and this was missing on September 11th, is incident management protocols. You can have all the technology you want, but if public safety organizations are not working together, not setting up protocols, not drilling together, not doing tabletop exercises together, when there's an emergency, you can't start that there. That has to happen before. And that was one of the lessons learned out of the September 11th attacks. Again, the Public Safety Broadband Network organization can help with that. One of the things that we could do, for example, is we could introduce the VA police and other federal police agencies into the International Association of Chief of Police committees. There are a number of committees that they could work with. And so that would, like the Technology and Communications Committee inside them, where they could be on that committee and share and understand the common problems that affect public safety communications on a much more broad scale. I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions you have. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd, for your testimony and technology you advocate for our police officers nationwide, including in my district. Mr. Retzer, you are recognized now for 5 minutes to provide your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kiggins, Ranking Members Mervan, and members of the subcommittee. DAV is pleased to offer our perspectives on the VA police force and security issues. First, DAV would like to express our deep gratitude to the VA police and security support teams for their unwavering dedication in serving and protecting our veteran community. VA police officers are responsible for deterring, stopping, and investigating crimes, and maintaining order within VBA, VHA, and NCA, with a total workforce of over 471,000 employees who provide services and care to millions of veterans a year. The VA healthcare system is encompassed of 172 VA medical centers and 1,138 community-based outpatient sites of care. Unfortunately, a community this large comes with security and safety issues. The VA 2023 annual performance plan reported the number of violent crimes committed on VA properties steadily increased year after year, with 3,131 incidences in 2018 and 6,538 in 2021. In February 2023, the VA Office of Inspector General assessed 70 VA medical facilities to determine if they met VA security requirements. The OIG noted VA generally complied with security training requirements and demonstrated general emergency response planning and preparedness. However, it identified multiple security vulnerabilities and deficiencies at the 70 facilities, to include unlocked doors in sensitive areas, insufficient police officers and increased vacancies, and inoperable security cameras. Staffing challenges were considered a significant factor to security issues identified, particularly the lack of visible and active police presence. Having police and security personnel presence at facility entrances acts as a deterrent to crime and comports with overall security of facility. Addressing the increase of violent crimes on VA properties will require oversight, identifying the unique challenges and security weaknesses that exist. It involves emphasizing training and implementing processes and procedures and protocols to address the privacy and safety of all veterans, with a special emphasis on our women veterans who use VA for services. It is important that we prioritize equipping VA police with quality and functional equipment to mitigate potential needs and threats. Madam Chair, Congress should pass legislation to ensure that VA police force has adequate staffing, resources, and training to meet the special needs of each VA facility and its respective locations. Security and safety should be standardized, tailored, and measured. VA needs to prioritize facilities or areas with higher incidents or violence or security breaches. Madam Chair, DAV is pleased to support H.R. 3504, the VA Medical Security Report Act. This legislation would require VA to conduct an annual survey on security at each VA medical facilities. This bill would also require the Secretary to provide an action plan describing how the department would address any identified security weaknesses. Another security bill referred to the subcommittee for consideration is H.R. 7765, the VA Security Screening Pilot Program Act. This legislation aims to implement a pilot program for a weapon screening technology at VA medical centers. We understand that VA is currently piloting a similar program at a few facilities. We certainly appreciate the intent of this legislation and the goal to continue safeguarding veterans, employees, visitors, and VA's properties. Finally, security challenges at VA facilities should be done in a manner that avoids creating unnecessary barriers to care for veterans, especially aging and service-disabled veterans, who are more likely to have medical devices, prosthetics, assisted equipment, and even service dogs. As such, it is critically important to mandate robust consultation with veterans and veteran service organizations before finalizing any changes to security protocols at VA healthcare facilities. Veterans understand the importance of security from our times in the armed forces in conducting and sustaining operations for this nation. It's only fitting that our nation, in return, provides the injured and ill veterans secure sanctuary for internal and external threats when seeking health care at VA facilities. In closing, we appreciate the subcommittee's attention to the issue of security and urge continued oversight to address identified areas needing improvement. Chairwoman Keegans, this concludes my testimony. I am pleased to answer questions you or members of the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Retzer. I now yield as much time as I may consume for my questions. Let's see. So, Mr. Connolly, we'll start with you. Thank you so much again for making the trip from Hampton Roads. I know that the drive is long. I appreciate you being here. And thank you for serving patients, including veterans from Virginia's 2nd District. My district chief of staff recently had twins at one of your Sentara facilities, and he certainly appreciated the great care and support he received. I know that Sentara makes a great effort to keep its patients and staff safe. And I know that we have championed legislation, especially to look out for our healthcare workers. We know that not just nurses, and as a nurse practitioner, it's a privilege to advocate for them, but all of our healthcare professionals and staff, we know are at risk, and we are well aware of some of those statistics. Thank you for reminding us that they put their lives on the line too, just being in that environment of the emergency room, dealing with patients in crisis. So I appreciate all the work you do to keep them safe. We'll continue to do our part as well. But can you talk a little bit about what some of the advantages are to having your own in-house security team as opposed to a contracted service like other facilities have?
Yeah, I think for us, it's the command and control and developing strategies that are unique to your specific facilities without having layers upon layers and contracts upon contracts. I think for us, it makes complete sense to be able to have those resources in-house, to be able to pipeline develop them without the barriers of going through a third party, right? I think from a strategic perspective, being able to groom your own employees to protect the staff and the communities that you serve. And I think also it is just, and just from an economic standpoint, it is more economic.
And are you fully staffed as far as workforce challenges? Do you have the security staff that you need?
Yeah, I think, obviously that kind of waxes and wanes a little bit. I think our average vacancy is a little less than 10%, but that is a marked improvement. So we've seen over the last 24 months intentional recruitment effort to bring in more security staff. I think part of it was us making sure that we were offering a fair market pay grade, pay scale, but then also allowing individual professional growth within those individual job codes. So I think we've done a yeoman's job in trying to reach out to the community, better understand what their needs are, and we've seen a remarkable improvement with our vacancy rates.
And does your security team do any training with our local law enforcement or use any of those facilities? We just had some federal money go to Creed's training facility.
Yeah, and I will tell you one thing that is, and I appreciate with all the security agencies within Hampton Roads, and I think it's fairly consistent across the country. At times healthcare can be somewhat competitive. At the end of the day, the security folks are really good at cross-pollinating best practices across different healthcare systems and across different federal agencies. And so I think it's very relationship-driven, but there is a lot of cross-discussion, across communication, and planning together to make sure that there is coordination within the regions that they serve.
And then is the security team the people that you call when you have a person who is having a mental health crisis? And we frequently have talked in our spaces just about the utilization of law enforcement officers to wait with these patients while they're waiting for placement. We know that wait time can be significant, sometimes even a day, up to 24 hours or more, and that we are utilizing a lot of times law enforcement officers, and then taking them out of their role where they might be needed for security. So who's providing that type of security for those patients in crisis?
Yeah, I think depending on the response, the initial response might be security individuals, but as that assessment comes down to maybe that individual's having a health crisis, we will transition that over to a clinician or someone that is trained to sit with that individual so we don't occupy security forces 24/7 on one individual.
And is it your in-house security team that provides, if you did have a patient that was transferred from a jail facility to be inpatient, then might require armed guard? Would that be your security team, or would that be an outside police?
Outside agency,
That's
typically.
outside agency. Okay, great.
Now,
Thank you.
we might supplement as needed to ensure the right security level protocols, but typically that is the outside agency bringing in their security team.
Great. And then how long is your onboarding process for new security personnel?
Typically, they'll probably go through a 6-week orientation. It's on the job. So they'll do the traditional compliance onboarding, and then they're typically buddied with a preceptor for a 6-week time frame, and then reevaluated and assessed of whether they're able to go off on their own or they need some more additional training to be functional.
But otherwise very integrated into the culture of your hospital, and they go through the same orientation.
100% integrated in culture. And going back to your initial question, that is also the value in keeping our security staff our own. It is really about the culture of Sentara and making sure they can reflect our core mission and values.
And can you speak briefly just to some examples of technology solutions that have enhanced security at your facility?
So during my statement, I talked about our weapon detection system. That's something we implemented about a year ago. It's an AI-based technology, so it's not your typical metal detector. It actually scanning individuals walking free flow. And so we did implement that about a year ago, and then it's been a resounding success, not only from keeping weapons coming in, but the feeling of safety for our employees. They see that, they feel safe. We've implemented a visitor badging system. So anyone coming in must have an ID, and we're able to track that individual as they move through the facility. The eventual evolution of that technology is it will integrate into our EMR. So if a nurse wants to flag someone on the floor, it will come down to the entrance, and that person may not be allowed to come in. So that's an example of technology. We are also right now going through the process of evaluating mobile parking lot cameras with some AI functionality, and integrating that into local law enforcement as well.
Good. Very good, thank you. And let's see, Mr. Dowd, I understand FirstNet technology is currently being used in Virginia's 2nd District. Could you tell me exactly where it's in use, do you know? Is it at the VA facility, or?
It's my understanding it's being used fairly broadly by the VA police.
At the Hampton Medical Center?
I couldn't tell you which specific locations, no.
Gotcha, okay. And let's see, we often hear from VA police officers that they're having difficulty communicating with local law enforcement during emergencies. So can you describe how FirstNet would be used by VA police to solve and resolve this issue?
So because it's a ubiquitous technology, it's the same technology that we all use on our cell phones every day, it's completely operable. So it's really not so much about the technology, it's about the protocols that are established between state, local, and the VA police to cooperate together. I mentioned earlier, the problem of September 11th so much was not a communications technology issue as it was an incident management issue. There were no real meaningful protocols in place for police, fire, EMS to interoperate on a major incident. That's changed dramatically around the country. Those types of protocols are available for the VA police. So FirstNet can facilitate that, but you still need to have the outreach and I would suggest from the VA to state and local authorities. You want to do things like participate in, if there are, emergency exercise drills, like mass casualty drills, the VA should be there. And by the way, that would go beyond the VA to other federal agencies as well. Without those protocols, without those familiarities, without have regular contact with your state and local folks, the technology facilitates and makes your situation easier. But without those touch points, you don't want to wait for the emergency to get familiar with your counterparts in state and local, and vice versa.
So is that one of the services that FirstNet offers, is helping to establish those protocols and making?
No, but again, my organization helps with that. That's something we do. But again, there are organizations like the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Major Cities Chiefs Association. They all can afford opportunities for that type of outreach and assistance. Again, I mentioned, just from a communications perspective, the IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, has a technology and technology and communications committee, and it's existed for over 40 years. I know in the past there have been members on that committee from federal entities, and there's no reason why the VA police shouldn't and couldn't have a representative on that.
I agree. Let's see, and then Mr. Retzer, one question for you. What sort of things does your staff hear from veterans about security at the facilities they visit, good and bad?
Thank you for that question. Our membership, being that they really rely on the VA healthcare, we have, in overall, they're very satisfied with the VA healthcare and also the safety components that are there. As you know, we as veterans, we are accustomed to the world of security. We understand the requirements there. And our officers in uniform, we look at them as peer-to-peer. So they bring that comfort, because we know many of them are veterans themselves. And so that peer-to-peer connection is building that bond, building that culture. We know that they understand our culture. So there's definitely a sense of security that is there. They feel physically and emotionally safe. However, we do have a group of our population that are still challenged with that. That's our women veterans. That is our minorities and LGBTQ+. Obviously, that there is a cultural competency that needs to be educated and trained on, and how to address those issues, along with putting it together with the unfortunateness of individuals now dealing with their mental health, of military sexual trauma, being trauma victims, or even post-traumatic stress disorder issues that they are dealing with. So we really rely on our officers, and they're doing a great job out there. I can tell you, like in Minneapolis VA Medical Center, when I go there, they actually are talking to our veterans, and they're actually, if they're Marines, they're each other, they're doing that thing. So it's really good to see that partnership. They're out there being visible, and that's very important for us.
That's great. Good. Thank you so much. And now I yield as much time as he may consume to Ranking Member Mervan.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Retzer, as you know from too many heartbreaking stories, veterans often visit VA facilities when they are in physical and emotional distress. As we heard from Mr. Hunt in the first panel, VA police officers are often asked to perform a wide range of duties, many of which may be untraditional for police officers. From your view, what role do VA police play in veterans receiving care?
Like I was sharing with Madam Chair, was that they are our peer-to-peer. They're there to cover our six. And it's really good to know, because they are veterans, and when I say cover our six, we really feel that way, because of the fact is we no longer have to do what we were in military, suck it up and drive on. So it gives us a chance to go and take care of ourselves while we know we have those who are trained well to take care of us.
Okay. Why is it so important for the perspective of veterans and veteran service organizations to be central in any proposed changes in security at the VA facilities?
And I think one of the most important things is veterans and veteran service organizations. We're extremely proud of the work that the Department of Veterans Affairs does. We rely on them for a multitude of things, from benefit services and healthcare services. And what we see is that we appreciate the Veterans Affairs being transparent. It's so important that they can be transparent with us so we can share the concerns of our health issues that may have impact with screening measures or personal measures. One of the things is, when our population is going to VA care, we have hundreds of thousands every day going to get care. And when they're going through the screening process, that's not a concern for them. but it's the way it's done. We want to make sure that they're not creating barriers, because many of our veterans with their injuries and illnesses have barriers with different types of prosthetics, medical devices that come with them, even pacemakers. Certain devices are not good for them to go through. So the screening process will create, lengthy wait times to get into the building, and it can also raise anxieties for those who already have mental health issues. So that's a perspective that we would like to be able to share, and veterans should be able to share that, to talk about what that feels like if these processes and procedures were put into place. For example, our metal detection machines, scooters and wheelchairs typically are not equipped properly for them to be able to go through the detection without them having some type of complication. And there is not always an ability for someone who has a loss of use of their lower extremity to get out of that vehicle that they're using to get in. So there has to be very thoughtful processes on how to mitigate and to help that system through.
And as we've heard today, VA has begun piloting weapons detection technology at the VAMCs across the country. Have you heard anything from your membership regarding this pilot?
No, we have not heard anything directly with that.
Okay. And following up, veteran suicide is top priority for the committee, and I know an issue that DAV also takes very seriously. My colleagues have brought up the recent report between 2023 and March of 2024. Only 1,297 out of the 4,505 armed VA police officers took to the annual suicide prevention training that is required in the Compact Act. This is less than 1/3 of the VA police. Obviously, that's extremely concerning. Why is it so important to have VA police adequately trained on suicide prevention and de-escalation?
It's so important because they are the first responders in many cases. And then they have also the ability within the VA facility, externally and internally, to be roving around, seeing what's going on. They have real-time eyes on the situation. And many times that they are out there, they are the ones that will be able to provide that service to diffuse a situation. Maybe there is some concerns that are happening out in the parking lot where we have abilities to get in. They can be that point of contact to navigate coming in. But then if there are situations, maybe they are getting the training. We hope they continue with their training to involve recognizing individuals with maybe opioid issues. Then they could be there to facilitate if someone was overdosing with Narcan. Those measurable things that could save a life. And at the same time, if there is a crisis going on, they identify through training someone who may be suicidal, that they can grab them, escort them, do that warm handoff to the clinical mental health providers that can take that next step.
Okay. And are there any other tools, training otherwise, that could help, in your view, help sustain better outcomes for veterans when they enter a VA facility in the need of assistance?
We believe that, the tools and resources that they can do, as long as they don't create any barriers, when there's that human touch there to provide not only the security and safety, but the guidance for them to go in and navigate the system, that is a huge component of what they're looking for. The veterans experience, they want it to be seamless. So any which way that we can to make the process seamless for them and very timely for them is what we're looking for.
Okay. And Mr. Conley, thank you for being here to speak to the subcommittee and provide best practices from your hospital. As a former healthcare executive, I recognize your commitment to ensuring the safety of your patients and providers. I understand that across your healthcare system, you have implemented an AI-driven weapons detection technology. How did your hospital administrators and security chiefs decide to implement these tools? Were these steps initiated by your patients, providers, or something else?
I think it was a combination of watching our workplace violence incidents increase across the system, and then getting direct feedback from our staff. And their feeling of safety within the walls of the hospital. And so those two factors led to the decision to pilot the programs at Norfolk General and at Virginia Beach General Hospitals, and with the successful pilot, the decision to implement this system-wide.
So just the vision of the device. When you go to a baseball game, you walk through. When someone comes to the hospital, is it the same system?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is not a queued up system like a metal detector system. It is a free flowing back and forth system.
Do you have to have, where those devices are located, do you have to have security at that device? So with your facility, the number of security that you have, does that put a strain on the ability of the police because you have to have someone stationed at that facility and not patrolling or doing other tasks? How have you managed that, and can you answer that question?
Yeah. When we did our concealed weapon detection system assessment, we realized that there's going to have to be additional staff. And so we didn't want to take from our current staff that are rounding in the hospital and stationed in the ED. This would be an incremental expense for staffing the equipment 24/7.
So your facility actually added security in order to facilitate the technology for weapons detection?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know at what percentage of increase that cost or over budget, or
Yeah,
how you plan for that?
So for every system, it's a 24-hour system. It's about 4.8 FTEs. So 12
FTEs stand for?
employees, full-time
Employees.
equivalents. Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. So you got to figure it's roughly about 5 employees per system. And so if we're gonna locate them within 12 EDs, 5 additional employees per system. So roughly about 60 employees.
Okay. And then from my own personal knowledge, because I've never heard of it, you talked about the parking lot cameras
Yes.
and their AI functionality.
Yes.
Examples of cameras with AI functionality.
So so the functionality, and we haven't fully implemented it, but it allows not only to put eyes on the parking lot, but also scan plates, has the ability to do facial recognition. And so, we right now using it really as a visual deterrent, but the capabilities to connect into local law enforcement does allow them to kind of extend their reach into the communities that may not be patrolling at that time.
Okay. And Mr. Dowd, if I can ask a quick question. You talked about the capabilities that your associations offer up when it comes to broadband and trying to get...
So again, the technologies that have been developed over the last 5 or 6 years in response to the development of the nationwide public safety broadband network, there are now hundreds of devices in all kinds of functions, whether it's radiation detection, whether it's identifying suspicious packages.
I just wanted to kind of focus on communications.
Okay.
And my question would be, through your expertise,
Right.
You had mentioned the advantage of processes and procedures in place when it comes to the VA and the federal agency and local law enforcement and state law.
Right.
Do you have statistics of VAs that participate and VAs that don't participate?
I do not have those statistics, no.
Okay. And I guess in your expertise, other than tabletop exercises and encouraging that, what are ways that you think you can draw in those agencies to make sure that they're participating in those and tearing down the silos in order to be able to communicate?
And so again, through the associations that exist in law enforcement, like the International Association of Police, in outreach or from either side, from the federal side or from the state and local side, you can create those relationships. Without those relationships, again, it's a struggle when there's an incident. And so while the technology is there and all these different technology capabilities exist, without that outreach and without that first step to interact or to work together in incident management protocols, it's going to be difficult when something happens.
Okay. With that, Chairwoman, I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member Mervan. Do you have any closing remarks? You got them all out. Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to thank our panelists again for making the trip and for taking time from both the first panel and the second panel for being with us today and during National Police Week. And I know that speaking for the rest of the subcommittee, we are definitely committed to improving security at the VA and working with all of you. So thank you so much again for being here today. I ask unanimous consent that all members shall have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material. Hearing no objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.